7 women never returned, caught up in a terrible nightmare on a mobile murder vehicle. The killer smiled coldly. Every mile he traveled, another life was lost. What mystery lies behind it? Serial killer takes the lives of 7 women in mobile murder van. On a chilly morning in a quaint New England town, everything seems peaceful. The old wooden houses stand tall. The small tree-lined streets create a peaceful scene. But just below the quiet surface, the nightmare is gradually emerging, bringing with it unimaginable horrors. Chris William Devon, a name that has become a haunting name in the state of Connecticut. With an ordinary appearance, few would suspect that he is a notorious serial killer, silently spreading fear to everyone around him. Every night he continues his game of catch me if you can with the police, mocking their every attempt to catch him. His victims were all lured into the murder car where his most horrifying secrets were hidden. Melanie Ruth Camillini. Late that summer, Melanie Ruth Camillini, a 29-year-old Connecticut woman, went missing. She was a single mother, struggling to make ends meet. One evening, Melanie was driving home from work after a hard day. There, she met Chris, who offered her a ride. Without hesitation, Melanie agreed. But as soon as she got into his old truck, her life took a turn for the worse. Chris beat Melanie with a hammer, a brutal act that was only the beginning. Next, he made her stop breathing. After taking her life, he kept her body in the truck for 2 weeks, sleeping next to her as if nothing had happened. Chris called her corpse baby, a sickening nickname that reflected his twisted mentality. Danny Lee Wisnet. Just a few weeks later, Chris struck again, bringing in another victim. Danny Lee Wisnet, 44, was a lonely man. He was looking for an opportunity. With a deceptive smile, Chris promised Danny an easy job. Danny, naive and hopeful, stepped into Chris's truck. But as the door closed behind him, he had no idea that this was a trap from which he could not escape. Fear waited in the darkness, and with each passing minute, Danny knew his path to survival was closing. Chris mercilessly attacked Danny. After knocking him down, Chris hid his body in the woods as an act to cover up his crime. Marilyn Gonzalez. Marilyn Gonzalez, 26 years old, was the next victim in Chris's mysterious game. One evening, as Marilyn was walking home on a quiet road, Chris, with a calm appearance, approached her with a seductive invitation to breakfast. Without any suspicion, Marilyn agreed with a gentle smile on her lips. But no one knew that the invitation was a death trap. Chris lured Marilyn into his truck, and when the night fell, he drove to a remote area where there was thick darkness and no trace. There, Marilyn continued to be harmed. The scene was horrifying, with only the sound of the jungle testifying to the crime. Chris continued to hide her body, where the light never reached, and the prying eyes of the public would never find it. Nilsa Arizmendi. Marilyn Nilsa Arizmendi, 33, of Wethersfield, Connecticut, mysteriously disappeared on a cold night. That night, she was last seen getting into a dark blue truck. It was Chris's truck. Maybe Chris invited her to get in the truck to escape the bitter cold. But who could have known that it was a trap? Nilsa's boyfriend, the last person to see her, called the police as soon as he noticed her disappearance. The police were quick to investigate, but all the clues seemed to lead to a dead end. Like his other victims, Chris brutally murdered Nilsa. After taking her life, he tried to cover up his tracks. But this time, the police became suspicious and followed Chris. Nilsa's blood was found on the back seat of the truck, leading to Chris's arrest and questioning. Diane Cusack. Diane Cusack, 53, lived alone in a modest house in Connecticut. One dark and hazy day, she had no idea that fate was setting a trap. Chris William Devon, with his cold eyes and seductive voice, chose Diane as his next target. He invited her into his truck under the guise of friendliness, promising to help her solve some small problems. Diane, unsuspecting, got into the car, not knowing that it would be the last trip of her life. When the car door closed, all her hopes were dashed. She never returned home, and Chris disappeared along with a part of Diane's life. Chris carried out the same brutal scenario, continuing to use a hammer to knock Diane down. Diane's body was hidden in the woods, along with the previous victims, adding to the horror of the case. Joyveline Martinez. Joyveline Martinez, 23, was full of hopes and dreams, but everything was shattered when she fell into the hands of Chris. He kidnapped Joyveline on her way home, tortured her, and ended her life in his truck. Chris did not stop there. He continued to hunt for more victims, like a wild animal hungry for prey. Mary Jane Menard. Mary Jane Menard, 40, is a single mother of a daughter named Tiffany. Tiffany always remembered her mother as a strong woman, but one fateful day, Mary Jane never returned. Tiffany still remembers that day clearly, when she said goodbye without knowing that it would be the last time. Mary Jane was kidnapped by Chris and put in a truck. Like the previous victims, she was attacked. Her body was also hidden in the woods, leaving no trace. The series of disappearances and the strange disappearance of the victims prompted the police to begin a serious investigation. Finally, with DNA evidence found in Chris's truck, the police arrested him. Chris was charged with manslaughter and sentenced to 15 years in prison. But it didn't stop there. A local attorney, Ann Howard, looked into the unsolved cases and discovered horrifying secrets related to Chris. Ann began blogging about the cases, and Chris's story quickly became the center of attention. But for Howard, the information from the media was not enough. She needed to understand more about this man, about the real reasons why he acted the way he did. Without hesitation, she decided to write directly to Chris, hoping that he would open up and share his story with her. To her surprise, after only 2 weeks, a letter with Chris's name appeared in her mailbox. He agreed to share everything. From there, a series of letters were exchanged between Howard and Chris, and each one revealed a new part of his horrific crimes. Chris did not simply talk about the killings, but also described in detail how he had made his victims a part of his daily life. He told of how he slept next to the corpses, talking to them as if they were still alive. On one occasion, Howard visited the place where Chris had committed his gruesome crimes, a parking lot behind a shopping center. She could not help but feel a chill as she stood there, knowing that it was here that Chris had committed his cruel acts. The ordinary scene now took on a new meaning, becoming evidence of the twisted and sickened state of Chris's mind. Throughout the course of their correspondence, Howard tried to understand what had turned an ordinary man into a cold-blooded killer. Chris said that since the 90s, he had been haunted by sick fantasies, and when he started drinking, he lost control of his life. One night, he decided to make his sick fantasies come true, and from there, his life took a turn for the worse. Howard couldn't help but ask why. Why would a person do such things? Chris simply replied, "I chose to do what I did, and I just chose not to care." He didn't blame anyone, didn't make excuses for his actions. For Chris, murder was just a decision, a choice he made without regret. Chris was eventually arrested and convicted of the murders of 7 people. But the most terrifying thing was not the crimes he committed, but the way he accepted and admitted them. Chris was not a monster in the dark, but an ordinary man whose terrible choices cost the lives of 7 innocent people. His story, as written by Ann Howard, serves as a reminder of the darkness that can lurk in the human soul. Don't take your eyes off the screen, because we have many other dramatic cases for you to watch. Thank you for watching until the end of the video. Don't forget to like, share, and follow the channel to support us. See you again in the next video.